Well, folks, it's time to kick it old school. So you can feel cool. Give it to me, baby. Baby. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. This is Lou, and you are here for RTP OT. RTP, Riding the Pine Overtime number less miles. It is. That's what we're gonna call it. We're gonna call it number less miles. It's gonna be the most charismatic yet least talented episode we've ever had because it's going to be in honor of Les Miles. I'm joined today by newcomer Joel. Now, Joel, correct me if I'm wrong. You are not a Make-A-Wish kid like Dom is, correct? You're not here on a charity thing, are you?
Correct. I don't know. You'll have to correct the record on me. I had to blow somebody to get in here. But, yeah, you'll have to talk to Jake about that one.
Okay, so you got in the John method. Gotcha. Okay,
yes,
so
like
cleared all that up. I'm so happy that Joel is here. One, because then I have a reason to be here, because the only thing that keeps me going in life is the idea that my alma mater, kids who go to the school that I went to, might be good at football. That's right. College football is the only thing that keeps me going in life. And apparently that's all that keeps Joel going in life. So we can be miserable together. Joel, we're here obviously to talk about the biggest news in college football that we've had over the last 24 hours. We're recording this on Monday, the 26th. Les Miles, longtime coach, national championship winning coach at LSU, has been fired, has been released after their embarrassing loss to Auburn, 18-13 this past Saturday night. Joel, your thoughts? What did you think when you found out Les Miles had been fired on Sunday?
I mean, he's been on the hot seat for a number of years now. It seems like he's brought up at least the past 2 or 3 years. So I thought they would wait till the end of the year, but you called it, man. You thought he would get Lane Kiffin. I don't think they left him on the airport or anything like that. But you nailed it, man. I was just shocked. But he's been there a while, man, and he's been cutting it.
Truth be told, and Joel, you'll figure this out as we work more together. 99% of what I actually, you know what? 110% of what I say is in hyperbole, and I'm exaggerating on about 110% of the things that I say. So I figured he would be fired because of this loss. I was shocked that they did it in September. If you're going to see a coach who's going to be let go, if you're going to see a coach that gets fired, I understand when you're coming down to the end of the year and you get to oops, sorry guys. See, we're learning here. We made a mistake. I was surprised to see that they let him go in September before they got to the meat of their schedule in October. And quite frankly, the end of October through the end of the year, with the exception of one out-of-conference game, is brutal. These guys have got Ole Miss, Alabama, Arkansas, and then a couple of weeks later on Thanksgiving night, they've got A&M. I'm just shocked it happened so quickly. It's kind of that thing we've all been expecting for it to come. It's like that death in the family. Like, they've been on life support for like 2 years, and you've known that it was coming all this time, but when it finally gets here, it still shocks you. I was really just so shocked to see that they did it so quickly. Quite frankly, there's a lot of people who think that if Gus Malzahn, if the Auburn Tigers would have lost this game, he would have lost his job. So, which quite frankly, he probably still will by the end of the year, and we'll get into that. We'll talk about a couple of openings. But obviously, the biggest thing that everybody's going to start speculating about way too early before any kind of hire is made is going to be what's going to happen there at LSU, who's going to fill that spot for Les Miles. And obviously, we have the first candidate that you've got to talk about whenever you move into any kind of new era is you've got to talk about the interim head coach, and that's going to be Ed Orgeron, who obviously has a little bit of head coaching experience in the SEC with Ole Miss, not particularly positive experience. So, Joel, does Coach O have any kind of shot at getting this job?
Well, look, I mean, he's the guy there right now, correct? You know, he's got a relationship with these players already.
And he's the easy hire, right?
Absolutely. He's already been in the media selling his message. Things are going to change. He's going to make it wide open, more pro style, more aggressive on defense, all those types of things. He fits that LSU personality pretty damn well, if you ask me. So at the least, I wouldn't be surprised if Orgeron finishes out the year for them. I'll say that.
I'm 99% sure that he's going to finish out the year, just because I think it's going to be far too much work for them to try and find somebody during the middle of the year to bring in. And quite frankly, any qualified candidate, that's kind of the same thing like in my job. The guys who are qualified have a job. You know what I mean? The guys who are qualified, the guys who you want to work for you, you need to hire them away. You need to hire them away from their company. You don't wait for them to get laid off. The good people don't get laid off. The only problem that I have with O, one, he doesn't have a particularly successful track record. Decent at USC when he was, the interim coach after Lane Kiffin was let go. Miserable with Ole Miss. Then again, I mean, that was a decade ago, so you can't take that into account. The thing for me, think about this. Why was, out of all the candidates that we're going to talk about, the one thing that's unique about him, why was Les Miles let go? He wasn't let go because their defense wasn't performing. Even after Chavis left and he went to A&M, their defense still continued to perform. The reason he was let go is because, and also another point that we didn't bring up, Cam Cameron, their offensive coordinator, was let go also.
Absolutely.
The highest paid, was the highest paid offensive coordinator in the school's history, making $1.2 million, or $1.4 million. Cam Cameron was let go also. The reason why is because they've had this anemic offense. Les Miles hasn't changed with the times. He hasn't. The SEC is not the eye power formation conference that it was 15 years ago. You need to be able to score in bunches now. Case in point, the Ole Miss Alabama game that we just saw a couple of weeks ago just went insane, went crazy with scoring. Then again, Alabama might come out this week against Mississippi State, and it might be a 12 to 13 defensive struggle. We have no idea what's going to happen in the SEC, but if it ever got into a shootout situation, Les Miles or a Cam Cameron team was not going to be able to win that game. So the problem with O is he's a defensive guy. He's their defensive line coach, and I just think that they're going to want to bring in an offensive-minded guy who's going to want to really kickstart that offense and breathe some life into him, which a candidate who might be that guy, speaking of Mississippi State, I mentioned there for a second, be your boy, Dan Mullen there at Mississippi State. Why do you think what do you think it would take to get Mullen to leave, and do you think that his seat is hot enough that he would want to proactively leave from the Bulldogs this upcoming offseason?
I don't think his seat's very hot from Mississippi State's perspective. This is arguably the best coach they've ever had. He's been there 8 years now, and what he's best known for is turning below-average players into decent, good, even NFL players, which is not very easy to do at Mississippi State. He's also been able to recruit some five-star guys there. So the connections I think he has with the LSU job is he's been hitting Louisiana recruiting for a long time, very hard. Dak Prescott, his big guy, is from Houghton, Louisiana. So I think he's familiar with.
We all know Houghton. Everybody knows Houghton, Louisiana.
Everybody knows Houghton.
Everybody.
So I think he's familiar with high school coaches in that area, and it's obviously a bigger, better job for him. And I think he's a really strong candidate, especially with the news today about Scott Strickland, the athletic director at Mississippi State, leaving. He's been lockstep with Mullen the whole way. So him stepping out really sends a signal to me that Dan Mullen might be out as well.
Dan Mullen would be a fine, from an offensive standpoint, from being able to create a more productive offense. I think that Dan Mullen would be a guy that they would want to target. The only thing that I have is what you said there. He's not on a hot seat. He's already made those recruiting inroads. So my logic to why I wouldn't say that he would be looking to make a move. And that's another thing we can talk about, the philosophy that LSU is going to take moving forward. I can't imagine him wanting to leave that job when, like you said, he's already been recruiting in those areas. Now he's going to be able to recruit telling guys, hey, look, I'm still here. LSU, you have no idea who their coach is going to be. I've got stability. And that's one of the biggest things that parents want to see whenever you're sitting there, because you don't just have to pitch to the kid. You got to pitch to mom and dad too. And one of the biggest things that parents want to hear is stability. And they want to know that this coach is going to be there. They want to know that there's not going to be turnover, and that their kid, that the promises that are made today are going to be kept for the next 3 to 4 years. I can't imagine Dan Mullen wanting to make that. Another reason why, because you mentioned his seat isn't hot at all. Another thing for me is firing a coach. Like I said, I was so surprised that they did it in September. I figured they would have waited until October when their season was completely out of control. Firing a coach in September, if somebody were to approach me and say, hey, Lou, we're going to pay you more money, and one of my competitors were to approach me, and one of the first questions I ask is, well, why is this position open? Is this a new position that you're making, or are you getting rid of somebody? Oh, yeah, we fired somebody because they didn't work out, 4 weeks into their tenure this year. They didn't work out, so we got rid of them. ugh, whereas I'm secure over here at Mississippi State.
Right.
That would take a hell of a lot of money you'd have to throw at me, and quite frankly, I don't know. One of the things to consider is Les Miles was making $4.3 million. That's a national championship coach making $4.3 million. There's not a whole lot more headroom that I think they're going to be able to offer Dan Mullen when he came over. There's no way that they're going to pay him more. Or actually, let me ask you, do you think they're going to pay someone more? I mean, I'm not talking Nick Saban money. I'm not talking $7 a year. But do you think they're going to have to pay someone $5 or $6 million to come over? Or do you think they're going to go the route of, hey, let's get an up-and-coming guy, or let's get a guy who's down on his luck? I mean, there are no NCAA Power 5 coaches that are hard for cash or strapped for cash. But do you think they're going to go that route where they get the guy who's on his way up, or do you think they're going to have to attract over a guy and pay him $5.5 million?
Yeah, I mean, for a guy like Dan Mullen and a couple of these other guys we're going to talk about, I think they're definitely going to have to unload, the bank on these guys. Now, some of the obviously Coach O that's there right now, you're probably not
$450,000 to give you an idea.
Yeah,
$450K.
Right.
To do one of the hardest jobs in all of college football.
Exactly. But yeah, I think you're spot on with all these other dudes. They're going to be looking for some serious cash, even though LSU is one of the top, what are you going to say, 5 to 10 jobs? I think they're top 5 job in the country.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Just recruiting and the history of winning there, all that. They've got strong boosters, and they have already spoken.
They've got such strong boosters, they fire a 9-year head coach in September. Yeah, that's how strong their boosters are.
And they've already started talking about who they want for their coach, and I think they're going to be willing to do whatever it takes to get that guy here.
I think they're going to open up the coffers. Well, a guy who I really think would be an interesting, and this is the best. Believe it or not, people, I didn't pick this to be funny. This is just the most flattering picture of Mike Gundy that exists. This is the most flattering picture of him ever. He is the antithesis of Cliff Kingsbury. For as gorgeous as Cliff Kingsbury is, this guy is his anti. This is his Mr. Smith. Mike Gundy, I think, is a really interesting option. Obviously, there's the coincidence that Les Miles was the head coach at Oklahoma State before he came over. Mike Gundy's been the head coach at Oklahoma State for almost a decade now. Mike Gundy would be a really interesting situation for one reason. Mike Gundy has succeeded over the course, not for the first 4 years of his career there, certainly. Those were dark times. But he has succeeded throughout the rest of his career at Oklahoma State without a premier quarterback. Brandon Weeden is the best quarterback that Mike Gundy has had, and he has put together a handful of double-digit winning teams. That's one thing that LSU hasn't had, and they don't have on their roster right now. They do not have a quarterback. He's been able to take people with his air raid system and has been able to make offenses work, and has been able to create offensive schemes that keep defenses tired and don't allow for substitutions, and they run that hurry-up system, and he's making $3.75 million a year. You throw 4.5 at that guy, you throw 4.6 at that guy, offer him a 10-year contract, you might be able to bring him over. I think you might be able to land Mike Gundy. The only thing that would be standing in the way, as you can see there, he was an Oklahoma State quarterback, he's coaching at his alma mater. So that's the only hard sell. What do you think about that? Do you think the alma mater really means that much, or do you think if the guy can make another $1 million a year, he's going to jump?
You never know with these guys. Some people really, really love that alma mater. Gundy, to me, seems like that kind of guy. And I also think he's kind of in a similar situation to Dan Mullen that we were talking about, where he's still, I think, pretty safe there as things go. Now, I do agree with you about the quarterbacks. He would certainly have a lot better talent pool to work from working in Louisiana. But coaches always want to test their mettle in the SEC, man. It's just
it's the place that you go to want to prove that you are one of the premier guys.
Absolutely, you want to go and try to beat Nick Saban every year right now. That's what you want to do, or even Urban Meyer after leaving. That conference is pretty strong right now, but people still want to go to the SEC. Right.
Yeah, and you're right. And Mike Gundy's one of the names that's being thrown around. Now, probably the guy who is considered the front runner, the guy who is America's darling. I love him. I'm not a U of H fan. I live in Houston, but I am not a University of Houston fan. The hottest guy in college football. There he is, right there. That's our boy Tom Herman with that with that grill that Paul Wall made for him last year after they beat Florida State. I am. I don't. Everybody seems to think that Tom Herman is the answer. I do. I think he's a rising star in college football. Do you think that he's the guy at do you think that he's the guy that could turn things around for LSU? And do you think that LSU can get him?
Do I think they can get him? Yes. From the rumblings I've heard, also that's who the boosters want at LSU.
To give you an idea, there was a quote that came out last night that was on SportsCenter, and they gave the censored version of it, but the uncensored version of it, if we use our imagination, is one member of the Regents said, "Tom Herman, go fucking get him." So,
as we said, those boosters are loud, and they're going to get what they want. So I think they could get Todd Herman away from Houston. I mean, he's had an awesome success there, obviously, and he's one of those young darling coaches everybody wants to get on their rise, like you're talking about.
Well,
go ahead.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish that.
Oh, no, that's fine. He's turned Houston into the new Oregon, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
When Chip Kelly was at Oregon, everybody nationally, all these kids were wanting to go out to Oregon because they were the cool team and they got to show their personality.
Team. Yeah,
absolutely. And Todd Herman does that. He lets players be who they want to be. And I think a lot of guys want to play for him, whether he's at Houston, but even more so, I think, at LSU again.
Tom Herman is a hero to me because not because of what he's done on the field, not because of the his story. I mean, if you listen to his story is incredible. This guy, he and his wife, when they were I think he was an assistant coach at West Texas A&M or at West Prairie View A&M or somewhere like that. He was making $36,000 a year, and they were living in an apartment that was so gross that when they went onto government subsidized housing, it was an improvement. When they went to go live in the projects, it was amazing. The guys had an incredible journey now to the University of Houston. The reason why I love him, though, he was asked recently in a Sports Illustrated piece. He was asked when he wore a Slayer, I think it was a Slayer t-shirt, to a press conference, and he was asked by somebody, "Why did you wear a Slayer shirt to a press conference?" He said, "Because my Guns N' Roses t-shirt was dirty." So this guy, you're right, the personality that you mentioned, I love it. I'm going to completely disagree with you, though. I don't think LSU has any fucking shot at touching this guy, and I'll tell you why. First, he's making $3 million a year right now, and he's untouchable at U of H. For what he's done so far just in 2 seasons at U of H, he would have, or the past 2 seasons rather, he would have to go on a 6-year just complete disaster to even be on a lukewarm seat here in Houston. This guy is a celebrity. He is on J.J. Watt status here in Houston right now. People love this guy. Another thing is he's making $3 million a year playing AAC schools. And Jackson at Louisville, he ain't going to be there for another couple of years. So he doesn't have a whole lot of competition. If these guys somehow make it into a Power 5 conference, he's making $5 million a year. I don't think LSU is going to pay this guy $5 million a year. I really don't. I don't think... If Les Miles, national championship coach winning Les Miles, which personally I would argue that Les Miles didn't win that national championship. Let's be real. That national championship was won by Nick Saban for you, okay, LSU. The reins were just handed over to Les Miles, so he has half of a national championship, I'll call it. I don't think that this guy is going to say, you know what, go off to these guys for $4 million. Or stay here where I'm golden. I might be getting a $2 million raise tomorrow if somehow we wind up in the Big 12, which doesn't look like it's going to happen, but they may wind up in the Pac-12 or the ACC. Things are shaking around. We can talk about that in another episode. I don't see how there's any way that LSU can take him. Again, and like I said, you just fired your coach in September. What's going to happen to me if I don't come in? And he hasn't recruited Louisiana before. He's got an in-route in Houston. He hasn't recruited Louisiana, and you've got to be able to do that at LSU. Honestly, I think that Tom Herman is going to say thanks, but no thanks. I really don't see him leaving. If he's going to go somewhere, it's going to be when either Kevin Sumlin or possibly if Baylor comes after him really hard, if Baylor makes a nice pitch to him here in the offseason. I can't. If Kevin Sumlin gets fired from A&M or if Charlie Strong gets fired from Texas, I could see him going then. I don't see him leaving for LSU. I just do not see it.
Yeah, I definitely think staying is the right decision to make. I definitely agree with you there.
Too much instability and too many demands at LSU right now.
And he's the media favorite, but I think personally, I didn't mention it before, Dan Mullen's right now is my favorite to leave. I know I'm disagreeing with you there a little bit. But.
Well, here's my favorite to leave, and I know that I just mentioned Louisville, and I know I just mentioned the AAC, but my favorite to leave, and again, this is the best picture of Bobby Petrino that exists.
Man.
Seriously, his wedding picture, he's drunk. There's no better picture than this. I'm sorry, everybody. This is it. This is the only thing I could find. Bobby Petrino, I think, has an incredible, has just what he has done there at what he's done there at Louisville, coming back and completely turning that place around. He's eaten humble pie like you wouldn't believe after everything that happened with him and taking some time off and then going to coach for Western Kentucky and then going over to Louisville. He has lit that world on fire, and I think that Bobby Petrino, you said everybody wants to get to the SEC. Bobby Petrino is an SEC coach. That is what he did. He loved being in Arkansas. Quite frankly, the only reason a couple of years ago when they went 11-2, he wasn't playing for the national title is because you already had two fucking SEC teams when you had LSU and Alabama playing each other in the national championship. This guy can come back. He's recruited that area before. He did it when he was at Arkansas. I think Bobby Petrino would be the perfect pick. Now, that being said, he's making $4.3 a year. So if LSU wants to bring him in, they're going to have to give him some cash. But genuinely, I think that the LSU fans, I think that they want a big-name coach. You know how every time every time there's a shitty NFL franchise who fires their coach, it's, we're gonna go get Bill Cowher. Oh, we're gonna go get John Gruden. No, that's gonna be our coach. Oh, Spider Y Banana. Ugh. How everybody always throws out those big names. That's what LSU fans want right now. They want a big name. I don't know if they want a character the way that Les Miles was, but they want a big name. They want somebody to be able to say, "Hey, look at us." They don't want an up-and-coming star. I think they want a guy who's already established. And so, to me, Petrino fits every parameter I just laid out. He's the guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's a strong pick right there. And he gives you the best of both worlds. He gives you the personality, really, unintentionally, because he tries to be the straight-laced coach and all that, but everything around him is just hilarious.
And have you seen the co-eds at LSU? I mean, that's attractive enough for him to come. So, I mean, he's sold on that.
I think if LSU does go after him, though, they really need to put a clause in the contract, obviously, about motorcycles. I think we can throw in, like, fan boats for the swamps down there, too. Because I could see that being a disastrous situation, but tricycles are so. I don't know what they're called, but like the motorcycle tricycles. Are you good with that? Because that's a lot more stable. I don't know, man. I think I would just make this guy have a driver everywhere he goes. Don't let him operate any kind of motor vehicles.
So jet ski co-ed diddling is gonna be out. That's not a part of the contract.
Can't have that anymore.
Okay, can't have that. Okay, so one thing that you and I wanted to talk about, though, were some other candidates that people had brought up. Maybe, I guess I wanted to close on maybe two controversial candidates, both of which I love and both of which I think fit the system, but both of which obviously are going to get some eyebrows raised from some people, and I think I think they're going to be split down the middle. I think they're going to be 50-50 guys. The first one is Mr. Get Fired on a Plane, Snakes on a Plane, more like Pink Slips on a Plane, Lane Kiffin. Mm-hmm. What do you think about Lane Kiffin? Currently, he's completely revitalized that offense at Alabama. He has added, like I said, what Les Miles didn't do is he didn't evolve. He didn't build a system that can go out there and control the clock and can go out there and win a shootout. Alabama has. That's what Lane Kiffin has been brought in to do. They will get into a 12-13 matchup against Mississippi State, or Lane will have to go out there and he'll have to build a system where against Ole Miss they can go out there and score 32 points in the fourth quarter, or 35 points in the fourth quarter. I think Lane Kiffin brings an incredible value to them too, because he's only making $1.2 million right now at Alabama. I think you could pick this guy up because he wants to be a head coach again. I think you could snatch him for about $3 million. Which honestly, that might even be overpaying him. That really might be overpaying him at this point.
Yeah, totally agree. And we both know all the money in the world is not going to feed that ego that Lane Kiffin has. We all know he's got it. He's got that cocky swagger and all that. And kids like to play for him for that reason. I mean, he did have some pretty good times at USC when he was at the helm. You remember Matt Barkley and Robert Woods and all those guys. So we know he can design an offense that can turn LSU around. And the thing I look forward to most, if that's the case, Lane Kiffin at an LSU tailgate. Are you kidding me?
Donors?
Yes.
Keep an eye on your wives, because he will come after them. Okay, that will happen. That is the thing. What Bobby Petrino is for 18-year-olds, he is for 48-year-olds. Okay, so he will be searching. That's just that's how it works. I think that Lane Kiffin would be a great. But what do you think about the money? I mean, do you think that Lane Kiffin, like you said, his ego carries a bigger weight than his checkbook does? Do you think that they could get Lane Kiffin on the cheap for do you think that his ego is so insatiable that for like $2.5 million you could get an SEC head coach for $2.5 million? Do you think you could do that?
Man, to give him a shot like that at another big time program, you might be able to. Although that ego thing might play into, I want to be paid as much as this guy because I think I'm better than him too.
I think that'll come if he wins. I think if he wins there, that will come along. But I think to start off, just to get his foot back in the door, I think he's going to be. I think you're going to be able to get him at a discount. Maybe not 2.5. That's exaggerating. $2.5 million because and people say, coaches get paid way too much. The highest paid employees in their states. No one works fucking harder in the state of Oklahoma than Mike Gundy and Bob Stoops. Nobody works harder here in the state of Texas than Charlie Strong and Kingsbury and Kevin Sumlin. No one works harder than those big time college football coaches. I think he's a dark horse candidate, and I definitely think he's going to be one. How do you think the LSU fans would react to Lane Kiffin coming in, though?
I think they
with
would
all
be
his
excited.
baggage.
Yeah, I think the baggage even plays into it because he's, like you talked about, he's a big name. Lane Kiffin, everywhere he goes, makes headlines. So, he's going to have people talking about LSU. And, as good as Les Miles has been, he hasn't made for a lot of great sound bites of recent, and the whole eating of the grass is kind of worn thin. So, Lane Kiffin's
did he stop eating grass? Was that what happened? Did that fuck it all up? God damn it. He stopped eating grass.
Yeah, I think you know what, and they could even do something like give him the $2.5 million and give him some incentive-laden contract where you've got a
really heavily commission base. Is what you're saying?
Absolutely, yeah. Performance.
And see, here's a guy who's trying to see, and that's the thing. What makes him different than everybody else who we've mentioned, with the exception of he is the only guy here who's a coordinator. He's the only guy here who's not a head coach right now and who would want to make that leap back into a head coach position. So that's why I think that he's going to be, I'll put it this way, he's going to be, out of everybody we've talked about, he's going to bring the greatest value. He's going to bring the greatest bang for your buck to LSU. So I think that you could get him on the cheap. But again, LSU is not about doing things on the cheap. LSU is about winning championships. So I take that out of it. That was just kind of a thing that I was bringing up. But I think that if it came down to two guys and you think that Lane could do just as good of a job as Dan Mullen or Hugh Freeze or whoever it may be, whoever's available, I think that you would obviously go the cheaper, younger route versus the guy who's going to be more expensive if you think they're of equal value. The final guy that I want to bring up... obviously, it has nothing to do, and I'm going to preface this by saying, from being able to create an offense that can score points in bunches, from being able to recruit kids out of not only Louisiana and Mississippi, but Texas, more importantly, Texas, being a guy who is a big name and will make a big splash, and a guy who will hand that defense over to O and let O run it the way he needs to. This guy on paper makes sense every single step of the way. But when you get to the character thing and you get to the controversy thing, I just don't know if they're going to be able to justify bringing in Art Briles. Joel, can Art Briles be a Power 5? Can he be a college football coach right now?
I think absolutely. I mean,
really?
Yeah. Well, we all know winning changes everything, right?
Right.
So if he could go into LSU and start off next year with a strong, showing in the first few games, they're going to schedule pretty tough again early on. It's going to be ugly for a year or two at least. I'm not going to like it at all. But, yeah, I mean, I think we've seen it over and over again. All these guys get second chances.
They get second chances, but I think he's going to have to eat some pie for a while. As we saw with Bobby Petrino. Bobby Petrino just came off of an 11-2 season, gets caught. That's the thing about Bobby Petrino. He wasn't even involved in anything illegal. He was just cheating on his wife with a 22-year-old. I think she was like 24. I think she was a graduate assistant or whatever. He was cheating on his wife and got in a motorcycle wreck and lied about it. Nobody got hurt. Nobody's lives
Except
were
him.
ruined because of him. Yeah, except him. Nobody's lives were ruined except his
Right.
And his family's from what he did. And he had to go to Western Kentucky, and he's had to go back to Louisville. He's had to go back out there and earn his opportunity to come back into major college football, back into a Power 5 conference. Art Briles, man, like I said, he brings you everything you would want to see out of this position. He brings you a guy who can score points and bunches, who can go out there and who can get into a shootout with Alabama, or who can build a defense so that they can be in a ground and pound situation against or counter your Ole Misses or somebody like that. I am just not, man. I don't think he can touch him. I really don't. Just from the baggage that comes along, just from the history of LSU football also with player discipline and players getting in trouble and off the field incidents, I just think that would be such a bad look for LSU. Oh man,
No, totally.
what do you say? Okay. What do you say to the LSU fan base that says, "Yeah, hey, this guy let a bunch of kids get raped," and that's also the other thing. In today's Tumblr and Twitter and whatever the fuck social media culture that we live in, as soon there will be protests. If they were to even bring him in for an interview, there will be protests campus wide from rape survivor groups and from women's groups and feminist groups and everything else, and just I think halfway decent human beings, period. There will be just riots constantly, and I think that would just be too bad of a look for them. I think Bobby Petrino cheated on his wife 6 years ago, easier to get over, or 5 years ago, easier to get over than Art Briles let rape go on and didn't do anything about it for a year ago. So
absolutely right. He's got to take at least a year off. I do agree with you there. I think it could be done, even with all the protests and everything that I'm sure would happen as well. It would be really ugly. And the real reason I don't think that he's going to go there is because of his personality. We're talking about the baggage and all this. I think LSU wants somebody exciting, man.
He is a very mild-mannered guy.
Yeah.
You're right. He's not a Bobby Petrino.
He's not boring. He's disciplined.
He is.
Church guy. So I think all those things. I think they want somebody new, fresh, and exciting. Even Bobby Petrino is a little more exciting, even when he's trying to be straight-laced.
Yeah. So putting a pin on it for this part of it, you're saying Dan Mullen is going to be the coach. He will be the next coach of LSU football.
Maybe that's just my paranoia, but yeah, I think the tea leaves are pointing me in that direction right now.
And to me, it's Bobby Petrino. I think that Bobby Petrino is that right now. Who do I want to see? I want to see Mike Leach leave Washington State and come back to the South. I want Mike Leach back, baby. I love Mike Leach. You people in Washington, you don't know what you have. He's not a great quality football coach. Not talking about that. He is such a great train wreck. You don't know what you've got. You people don't appreciate it. You're too busy going to farmers markets and comparing different types of almond milk. You've got one of the best train wrecks in the history of sports, and you just let it pass you by. So the other side of the question, then, if we don't know what's going to happen at LSU, well, we've got an idea of what's going to happen at LSU. One, do you see Les Miles having a job? He was on the Dan Patrick show this morning, and he was reported. I've got the quote here. Les Miles came out and said, "I don't play golf. I'm not really that good at fishing. I'm okay at shooting a gun, and I don't really like reading books. All I've done for the last 10 years is be a coach for 14 hours a day. I don't know what else to do with myself." One, do you think at the kickoff, do you think September 2017 he is coaching for a Power 5 school? And if so, what school is that?
I personally don't. I think, this news is hitting him really hard right now, and I think that was reflected in that interview with Dan Patrick. But I think he's going to take some time, be with his family, and then I honestly could see him going for, even a small cameo on some of these college game day shows for about a year. Make that tour on the media. He'd be fantastic. He's got the personality. He can tell some stories, and he can grab your attention when you're watching him on TV. So I think he could make a little media tour for a year or two, and I think he would enjoy that, actually, watching all these games and talking about all these players. And then, maybe a year or two down the road, that guy's going to get another really good shot at one of these top teams.
I read into that comment the exact opposite. as you. I read into that comment saying this guy has nothing else in his life for him but coaching football. That's what he does. He is a college football coach. And quite frankly, I think the more time that he would take off and the more time he's away from these high school coaches and the more time he's away from the recruitment trail, I think would actually be a deterrent for him. I've got two options, one of which I think is more realistic than the other, one of which I think would be more beneficial than him. The two places I could see him winding up. I said earlier that Gus Malzahn very well may have been fired this past Sunday if they would have lost on Saturday, if LSU could have gotten off that last second play and they could have scored a touchdown there from the 30 and Auburn would have lost for the second straight game at home. I still think Gus Malzahn is going to find himself out of a job come December. I genuinely think that Auburn is going to be in the market for a new coach this upcoming year. I think that he'd be a great fit for Auburn because Auburn, here's the thing about Auburn. Their recruitment, you'd think, well, Auburn has such a hard time recruiting against Alabama. No, Auburn's been in the top 15 for the last 5 years. Gus Malzahn, you're just not a good coach. Gene Chizik was just way better than you are, and you just took, just like Les Miles, took Nick Saban's leftovers, and he went off and won a national championship with it. You took Gene Chizik's leftovers, and you went off and you lost in the national championship to Florida State. Gus Malzahn just isn't particularly good at his job. Now, like I said, they've been in the top 15, top 16 for the last 5 years, and they've just completely cratered over the last 3 years. I think that the Auburn fan base, and I think that the Auburn athletic department sees that, and I think that'd be a great position for him to come in. However, I think an even better place that could take better use of his capabilities would be Arkansas. Personally, I think Brett Bielema's out after this year. Brett Bielema has not come in and delivered. He was behind the 8 ball to begin with. He really was, after all the stuff that went down with Petrino, and then they had, who was the guy who was there, their coach for a year? The guy who was like in $20 million in debt or something like that, something crazy.
Oh,
the joke always was, after the coin flip, he'd steal a quarter. I can't remember what that guy's name was off the top of my head.
Me neither. That's hilarious, though.
But the point is, I think Bielema's going to be out of a job. I really do. The guy has run his mouth. The guy has come in and been boisterous like Les Miles, but he hasn't brought the results that Les Miles has brought to the program. Here's the thing about Arkansas. LSU, while they've been in the top 10 for 6 of the last 7 years, and the 1 year, 2014, that they weren't in the top 10, they were number 11, they've been in the top 10 6 of the last 7 years. In that same time, Arkansas hasn't cracked the top 20 as far as recruiting is. And they're only 300 miles away from Louisiana. They're only a few hundred miles away from all these recruits that Les Miles has been bringing in throughout Baton Rouge, throughout southern Louisiana, throughout Mississippi. All the same people are there. They're right there. I think that they could take so much advantage of what Les Miles has done, building his name and building his recruiting capabilities throughout the Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi area into Florida. I think that they could take advantage of that, and I think that if they get rid of Brett Bielema at the end of the season, which that's the thing, I feel less confident that Brett Bielema will be out of a job than I do Gus Malzahn. I think Gus Malzahn is out. I don't think there's any way he can save his job in Auburn, considering how much talent they've had come through there, and they still haven't been able to put anything together. I think that Arkansas could benefit greatly from a Les Miles replacement of Brett Bielema.
Absolutely, and something people forget all the time about Arkansas is they have the most money backing that program. We're talking about Walmart money. So
talking about Jerry Jones Cowboys money.
Absolutely. Jerry Jones involved too. So they can have they have the top of the line facilities anytime they want.
They can have anybody they want. Yep.
Yes. So if you get a Les Miles there, I don't know what Brett Bielema's issue is with the recruiting, and he hasn't been nailing it the way you think somebody could there. But you might be right on the Les Miles. Now, out of those two jobs that you mentioned, I think I would rather see Les Miles go to Auburn. Just if for anything else, I'd love to watch the Iron Bowl with Les Miles and Nick Saban coaching against each other again.
And you know what? That's what's that's what's been the watermark for him his entire career has been Nick Saban, because as I said that was Nick Saban's national championship that you won, Les Miles, not yours. The only reason you won it is because he went off to go be shitty for the Dolphins. And so they've always been compared to each other. They've always been there at the hip, having them in state. Oh man. What would the recruitment pitches be like on some kid's couch with his parents in Alabama when you've got Nick Saban coming in at 3 o'clock and then you've got Les Miles coming in at 4 to talk to you. Oh, that'd be awesome.
And
that'd be incredible.
Can you imagine how serious Nick Saban would be when he's, recruiting against? I just can't imagine the frustration and the anger that guy would have. Like, I gotta still compete against this guy. Now he's in my state.
Yeah, I think that'd be good, and I think that's a good place for us to. I think that's a good place for us to put it. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We will be, by the time this goes up, you'll be able to tune in to RTP Live every Tuesday. I think this upcoming week we're going to be eating fried Twinkies. That'll be fun. Those should be delicious, but Twinkies themselves are selling them now, so we don't know. And Joel and I will be back. I'm sure there's a lot more college football stuff that we're going to talk about. Once we get into all the ranking controversy later on in the year, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff. So everybody be sure to like, comment, subscribe, let everybody know, share this with everybody, and let them know for two idiots with no athletic ability whatsoever talking about college football. This is your place to be on RTP OT.